Good morning, everyone. This is Jason Rodriguez with Z Prime. Welcome to the WE3 Clean Tech Innovation Series. We have a great discussion today. Climate ready grid now, how? So the sheer fragility of our infrastructure amidst severe weather events over the past month have struck our nation. So how do we overcome some of these complex issues facing utilities and other stakeholders across the US? I have the pleasure today of being joined by Dr. Andrea Ruotolo with Liberty Utilities and Darren Brady, the Chief Customer Officer of Smart Energy Water, to guide the discussion. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Darren and Andrea and have a great conversation.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we're looking forward to the dialogue as well. Andrea, it's great having you here today. Well, I just think this series is just becoming more important than ever, putting the clean energy conversation and what we need to do as an energy industry to address climate change and just making it front and center. And I think today's discussion couldn't be more timely, right? Grid resilience and creating a climate ready grid is just top of mind, not only for those of us in the industry, but I think for the public at large, given some of the events that we've seen over the last several months. And we're looking forward to getting your insights on the topics today. So I thought it'd be fun just to start off, let's let the audience get to know you a little bit. So we've got some quick lightning round like questions to get to know you and before we jump into the topic. So here's a couple. So did energy find you or did you find energy?
What a great question to start with. Thank you, Darren. Energy found me. I was originally interested in going to space, so I became an aeronautical engineer. But along the way, I was working with wind turbine blades in Spain. And the more I learned about the energy transition, the more I realized that the most important planet we need to think about is the one we are already on. So I shifted focus to energy to help address climate disruption.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great story. So what's something you believe that other people think maybe is just crazy?
Yes, okay. So I think there's a few things, but I would say maybe the most relevant
energy related
here,
energy
related, right? Is that I believe the economy could work better if we focused on collaboration more and competition less. So the majority of economists think competition is the key to everything working better, but I believe it's possible to overdo it with competition.
No, that's great. I mean, I think there's kind of co-opetition, right? I think in our space, and we'll talk a little bit about today, I think partnerships and working together, addressing some of the broader areas we're thinking about today around grid resilience, climate change, I think is an important piece. I agree with that. So I don't think you're crazy. There you go.
We are two crazy people, maybe.
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. So what's the best advice you've been given?
Yes, so it's hard to pinpoint just one thing, but there are two key advice that I follow. I remind myself of this and I follow every day, which is love your neighbor as yourself, right?
Yeah.
Jesus said this, and I believe that's so critical to guide what we do every day. And I think our work is about serving others. So it's so important to be reminded of that. And then know thyself. Know thyself, I think, is so important for everyone, but especially for leaders, to understand what are our strengths and weaknesses, especially to also bring in the best of others and complement our strengths and weaknesses to build great teams.
I couldn't have said it. I mean, I think that's so appropriate, especially obviously given what we've been through as broadly, right, globally through the pandemic over the last year, and what we still need to work through, not just for this discussion but for others. That is fantastic. And then finally, last kind of quick question: what would you put on a billboard? What would be that saying?
That saying. Okay, so, and do I get, I imagine I get one chance, right?
You get
So-
one chance. You might get to take it down after a few months and put another one up, but what would you start with? There we
Okay.
go.
Yes, awesome. So adapting to what this century has in store for us will take all of us working together.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen the saying all together, let's all work on it together. I think we've seen that a lot over the last year or so, more so than normal. And I think that's really appropriate for the conversation today and what we're going to talk about around climate change and things that we need to address to really help ourselves going forward. That's fantastic. Well, that's helpful. Hopefully the audience get a little more insight into you. But I think the other piece is that I think is really interesting is your title, right? Grid monetization and innovation. So maybe share a little bit with the audience about what that role is within Liberty and kind of what you're focusing on today.
Yes, thank you. So I'm currently responsible, as you said, for grid modernization and innovation across 40 plus utilities at Liberty Utilities. And what's interesting is that these teams falls under the customer insights and solutions branch of the company. So everything that we do on modernization and innovation is focused on serve our customers better. I'm really excited about how it all aligns internally and what we get to do. I'm passionate and I've been working on innovation and strategy, but also coaching, because really the challenges that we are facing are increasingly more complex, and we need to build these high performance teams, right? That they are more resilient, they are more ready, they bring their best thinking, their best attitude. And to build those high performance teams, we need high performance individuals. So there's also that component of bringing people to the next level of what they can achieve. So we are looking at solutions at the grid edge, right? In front of the meter, behind the meter, serving our customers with what they need today and what they will need over time. Some may not even be aware that they need climate ready infrastructure, but we are thinking about those things, and that's part of my role. And I'm very fortunate to have a team of very passionate people, but also a team that is highly knowledgeable. They've been working in this industry for a long time. And also there are team members that come from other industries.
Exactly.
So we create this cross-pollination, right? That helps us think differently. So I hope that answered the question, or I think I derailed a little bit.
No, you did perfect. No, you did perfect. I mean, as some folks may know, we at SCW are a partner with Liberty and you and other members of your team. And I would agree with everything you said, right? I mean, in terms of the partnership, the experience and the mix of skill sets, right, that need to be put into play as we talk about the topic today, right? I mean, I think that's really important. It's just there's a variety of skills that now are needed in today's industry to really drive the things around innovation and technology and customer engagement. And I think we see that with what you're doing at Liberty, which is really exciting. Well, let's dive into the topics here. So let's start with Texas, right? And I believe that you posted recently that the Texas outage serves as another wake-up call to design and build a climate-ready infrastructure. So what are some of the key conversations now that you're having as a result of that winter storm in Texas that really, I think, honestly, right, crippled the grid?
Right. Thank you for that question and for bringing up that, yes, another wake-up call, right? Because this is not the first time that we have had these long outages and we realized that our infrastructure is not climate ready, right? So this is another one, and I think we're starting, at least people, our communities are starting to realize that we need something different. So when the storms first caused the outages in Texas, one of the key conversations was about what failed in the system, right? And at first, some people were saying that the problem was the result of too much wind power and solar power
That's
on
right.
the Texas
Yeah.
grid. And it is true that some of the wind and solar generation wasn't generating power when it was covered in ice. But as more information came in, we also saw that one of Texas nuclear power plants also failed, and so did several coal plants and large portions of the gas distribution system and gas power plants, right? So any of these systems can be made to work at extreme temperatures. For instance, there are wind turbines in Antarctica, right? And gas plants in Siberia. So the problem wasn't really the types of generation. It was how everything was set up. And
Okay.
so the Texas grid and power generation systems actually weren't prepared for the extreme weather, right? So now the key conversation is back to what my team focuses on all the time, which is in a period of increasingly extreme weather events, right? How do we cost effectively design and build energy systems that can handle the new extremes?
Well, that makes, I mean, I agree. And I think, does that have an impact, when you think about planning, when you think about what's been done up till now, and you look going forward based on what we just experienced in Texas, when you think about what you're doing at Liberty and the role, and just even in Texas overall, how do you think about that in terms of next steps in planning for how to kind of work our way through those things?
Right. To be honest, it's been in my mind for the past 15 years. I've
Okay.
been working in the microgrids. I've been talking about climate ready infrastructure, adaptation, resilience for a long time. And this is one of the key factors that motivated me to focus on this planet and what needs to
Sure.
happen.
Yeah.
I've looked through the data. There's an amazing website from NASA. And now I'm connecting, right, my aeronautical side
There
with
you
my
go.
climate
I can
side.
hear it. Yeah.
But there's this website, which is Earth Vital Signs from NASA, that shows that really the trends are happening at a global scale.
Right.
And that really is an eye opener, I think, for anyone that looks into that we need to rethink how we plan. And yes, it's been always on my mind that it has to happen, but I think that now we have more people interested and ready to listen and open for this type of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we see sometimes, unfortunately, is a major event like we just experienced in Texas, sometimes is the catalyst for those next rounds of discussions and planning, right? And I
Yes.
think we're starting to see that now, given the heightened sense of awareness, given what happened there, and what that means going forward. And I couldn't agree more. So there seems to be a lot of solutions kind of now circling around as a result of what we just talked about around the news to address a climate ready grid, right? Things around supply side with batteries as an example, or even on the transmission and distribution side regarding AI prediction or foliage control, what we're starting to see. And then even on the customer side, right? Demand side management programs, leveraging smart thermostats and areas like digitized customer communications. So how do we see through what kind of sometimes feels like, right, this overwhelming complexity of what utilities, right, need to do now to create a resilient, secure grid? And maybe just fundamentally, right, if you walked in the office and tomorrow was Monday, what would you do on a Monday morning to start kind of organizing and the activity around those areas?
Absolutely. Yes, what to do on Monday? I think at night, right? And that's the challenge, but also the opportunity and excitement of being part of this industry at this time. I feel blessed that there's so much energy and excitement in this space. So yes, I think at night, what would we be doing
What
on
would we do,
Monday?
right? Exactly.
Yes. Well, as grid operators, we really need to know about all the technologies, right, that are changing the energy landscape. So I would say the most important thing to do on Monday morning is to know what all the options are, right? All the technologies options are for us, how they interrelate with each other, which ones we as the utility should be implementing ourselves, which ones we should be encouraging our customers to implement on their side of the meter, right? How to balance and integrate all of these energy resources and controllable loads working together. So I would say we need to shift our thinking from the old model of basically buying wholesale power and selling retail power um, to a model where we are orchestrating a multi-directional flow of energy that is much more complex. And a very important part of that is educating our own workforce, our suppliers, and our customers about all the new options that are now available.
You know, we got a question from the audience, but it ties right into some of the things, Andrea, you and I talked about earlier is how do you bring in the customer into this equation, right? I mean, we talk a lot about, and the industry does, on the generation side, on the broader decarbonization targets that we see out there, and more of them coming not only from utilities, but from commercial and industrial customer businesses as well. But how do we bring in the demand side, that consumer side of the equation in this overall approach?
Right, absolutely. We ask them, we talk to them, we communicate. There are many ways that we can use technology to understand where are our customers at. We have data on usage. We can look into that and offer how can they be using that energy more efficiently, but also having that conversation, sitting down with them. For instance, some of our customers are in the commercial industrial space. How does energy and how they consume energy fit with their corporate vision, right?
Mhm.
And their mission. And so I would say it's a dialogue that we need to generate. And now we have technology that allows us to do that faster and reach out and ask questions. So yeah,
I
I
couldn't,
think
yeah,
that that's as
absolutely.
simple as that.
No, it's a great answer. And I'm just thinking my own personal experience. I've spent, like you, most of my career in the industry and kind of watched things evolve over time as well around this whole area. And I think it's creating a partnership, right? It's bringing all the different stakeholders into the discussion, engaging them in it in the appropriate ways. I think about what we do at Smart Energy Water, bringing that engagement piece from a digital standpoint, engaging them in the discussion and enabling them to be part of it through energy management, control, and activity, and that communication that goes along with it, that helps them be a part of the broader goals that utilities, states, and at a national level that we're trying to do. So that we're all, back to your earlier comment at the very beginning, so that we're all working together, right? I mean, I think that's really the key broadly in order to really accomplish some of these broad objectives, is bringing all the different stakeholders together, working together to make those targets and goals. And I think that's what I've seen. It sounds like you're seeing the same thing in it. It's a process to do that, but it's that integration and communication. And I think technology today can play a really important role in helping facilitate that, right? And that's one of the next big steps of that integration piece, which is exciting. So here's the next piece, right? And the core topic really from my perspective is really around climate change and our energy infrastructure, right? And kind of what we've experienced as of late and what we're starting to see going forward, right? Climate change is becoming ever more apparent, more sporadic climate conditions, at least for the 100-year storm seems to be happening annually, right? Or at least feels like it across different parts of this country, but also globally. So what do you think? I mean, do you think our current energy infrastructure is really prepared to handle these changing conditions?
Well, unfortunately, on the whole, the short answer is no. Every year we are seeing new records set, new extremes of temperature, wind, too much rain in some places and not enough in other places, and coastal flooding. So just, to name a few of the most obvious changing conditions. So all of these extremes put pressures on our energy systems that they were not built to handle. So every year we are also seeing tragedies like what just happened in Texas, where a weather event that is outside the historical norm causes a widespread system impact. Right? So systems fail and people are left without services they rely on for heating, cooling, power, water, right? And waste management as well. So, and of course, that has a terrible impact on people, communities, and businesses. But it's important to understand it's not one single system that is the problem. When the Texas storms happened, a lot of blame was pointed at the grid operators. But it's also a big part of the problem that buildings are not well insulated. In our entire built environment and all our interdependent systems, there are many weak points. It's not just energy infrastructure. So climate disruption will force us to rethink and redesign energy systems and buildings, supply chains, farms, how we use water, and how we handle waste. There is a lot of work to do.
No, I think that's clear in terms of what we've experienced. I mean, what do you think, if you look out over the next several years, given where we are today, and what are some things that jump out at you of kind of key areas that as an industry, from an infrastructure standpoint, we should focus on? Because I mean, there clearly is work to do. I think we're learning some of the things that may have been done in the past that may not be as applicable now and going forward. What are those key areas from your perspective, given your background and what you've experienced?
So I think we are going to be putting a lot more focus on the grid edge. And yes, we are going to hear a lot more about batteries and distributed generation and microgrids. So that's a term that I expect is going to keep popping up, and we will see it more on Google search because there's just so many new functionalities, and it's just a new way of thinking about the grid. And I'm not saying everything will be at the grid edge, but I think it's going to play an increasing role in helping us redesign our grid.
Well, and we have a question that came in really just on exactly that topic around technologies looking out over the next few years. When you think about battery storage, solar, those grid edge systems, I mean, do they need to be thought through in more of a microgrid strategy? Can they be deployed kind of independently with the existing grid as it is today? What kind of changes do you think need to happen in order to facilitate these grid edge systems?
Right. So I'd say it depends, right? Each location, type of end user, special needs, right? Some are critical infrastructure. Some are just maybe an office building that may not consider. So the value of resilience and the value of keeping the lights on, there's this term I didn't come up with this term, but it's something that we use in the industry, which is heterogeneous resiliency.
Okay.
So I think we are going to see more that the type of technologies and how we locate them and the amount of investment we put behind resilience, it's going to be tied into what is the actual need of that site and what's the state of the grid, right? And balance
Exactly.
out how much investment do we make on one versus the other, or on both at the same time, because we also have seen a lot of value of having these technologies integrated into the grid and bringing value back to the grid, and the grid balancing out these different systems through, well, a DSO, but through a DERMS platform. There's just so much technology, new solutions, but there are some good examples of how this is working out, and I'm happy to share that with the audience if they have any follow-up questions.
That seems like another We3 Live series that we'll want to put together, or maybe a couple. I think that probably could take up a couple sessions. Well,
Yes.
let's get to the last topic, as I know we're getting towards the end. So let's talk about innovation, right? Something I know that's near and dear to your heart based on the work you've done. And obviously, you know, thinking about where we are and what needs to happen, innovation just needs to be really a critical theme throughout all utilities in the industry as a whole as we look going forward. So what is the role of kind of entrepreneurship, right? And kind of fostering a culture of innovation in the utilities at Liberty, for example, play in terms of creating a vision of a climate ready, resilient grid and making it a reality, and not so much just talking about it, right, in a webinar or in a speech, but what are the actual things utility leaders can do to kind of build out that ecosystem and the rewards that promotes people really maybe to challenge the status quo, right? To make a difference and to make changes?
Well, that's a great question. Do I have an hour?
We'll make another one around that. You can take as long as you'd like, but we can always do another series. Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll get through it as quick as possible, but I love this topic. So yes, this is a very important question in these times of constantly accelerating change on so many levels, right? Climate, technology, society, business, and actually ways of working. So in my view, the key to fostering innovation is to balance thinking about the system and thinking about the people in it. So let me get a little bit more into that. There are many studies and real world results that prove groups of people working together can be far more effective and innovative than people working alone. So the idea of the lone genius is mostly a myth. Like if most people imagine in their heads, right, that Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, right? They picture him working alone. But in reality, when he worked on developing that invention, Edison was working in a corporate funded a state of the art lab with over 30 assistants. So most of them highly qualified scientists, right? And so innovation is really a team sport. But there is also plenty of evidence that not all groups of people are more innovative than the individuals in the group are on their own. So how does that work? Sometimes, actually really all too often, the collective intelligence of a group is actually lower than the sum of its parts. And the reason a group of people, which you can think of as a system, can perform poorly is because of the rules of the system. So rules are usually not spelled out, but people know what they are, right? Like the rule that people in senior positions maybe would get credit for the group's efforts, right?
Sure.
So, or the rule that the person who introduces an idea is always recognized. right? So the rules like these that a group of people operate under have a huge impact on innovation. Good rules make smart groups that perform well, and bad rules make less smart groups that perform poorly, right?
Sure.
So regardless of the intelligence of the individual members of the group. So I would say the first most important thing leaders can do is understand the type of rules that lead to peak performance of groups. And there is a great study by Google about this. That study highlights the importance of psychological safety. I have brought this up before, but I think it's so important because this means that people feel free to speak up, especially to bring up issues or problems and raise questions, right? Without the fear of getting in trouble or being made to feel less intelligent or having their ideas taken by others without giving them credit. So the Google study, I think, is a great place to start.
Yep.
And there is other research and books on the topic, so I'm happy to share that. But yes, they've done this amazing study on what leads to innovation and high-performing teams. And I personally use those rules because I believe it's the best out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, culture is such an important part of innovation, right? We've seen it in kind of technology firms and others, you know, that we've seen as of late, but obviously kind of taking some of the lessons learned that's worked well in those other industries and applying it to our space, right? Because I think that's really an important piece. I think the other area too, right, in experimentation, getting, besides culture, just getting comfortable with just experimenting with new ideas and new technologies in a way that it kind of allows you to be able to kind of learn what works and what doesn't, right? Because the first time may not be the right way, right? It might require a few different iterations to go through it. So I think your comments on that, you know, really sparked kind of some great discussions that we can have going forward on innovation and what needs to happen to continue to drive it. Well, Andrea, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really have enjoyed the conversation. Great discussion. Thank you so much for your insights. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason.
Darren, Andrea, fantastic discussion. Yeah, those last few points there could have gone on for a few hours, it seems like. But it also gives us a lot of good key takeaways to take back into our organizations to do what I think we're all trying to do. That collective working together is going to be tough. So we appreciate those key takeaways. Darren, thank you. Thank you all of us out there for joining, all of you out there for joining us today. This session will be up by the end of the day. Please log back in and share. You can watch the sessions over the past few weeks and also join us next week for our next session as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.